Welcome to the HERHealth podcast, transforming health for women and girls at risk, where we empower women and girls to take charge of their health and well-being. Join us as we shine a spotlight on issues affecting women and girls' health and explore ways to create positive change. Get ready to be inspired and empowered as we discuss health, advocacy, and empowerment for women and girls at risk. Please be advised that this podcast may cover sensitive topics such as gendered violence. We understand that these discussions can be difficult to listen to. If you feel uncomfortable or need support, we encourage you to prioritize your well-being. Consider exploring our other podcasts if these topics are triggering for you. Resources can be found in the description.
Hi, and welcome to the HERHealth podcast. I'm your host, Alexandra Lazochuk, a master's student in community health sciences, specializing in public and population health at the University of Calgary. I also work at the Child Lab, where our team supports research aimed at improving lifelong developmental health. And in today's episode, we'll discuss about ConnectED Parents, a unique model that meets caregivers where they already are, online on their phones and in their everyday social environments to build their confidence and skills in fostering healthy youth relationships. And today we're joined by two incredible leaders driving this work. So first I have Lianne Lee, a researcher and program manager with 2 decades of experience supporting children, youth, and families through community programs, policy development, and applied research. And she leads the design and implementation of the ConnectED Parents Initiative. As well, we also have Sarah Winstanley, a facilitator, researcher, and registered social worker with nearly 15 years of experience designing and evaluating youth leadership and healthy relationship programs. She now leads knowledge dissemination and curriculum development for ConnectED Parents, and together they bring a deep experience and fresh insights in how we can leverage technology, evidence, and community engagement to empower caregivers and prevent adolescent dating violence. So let's get started. Thank you so much, Sarah and Lianne, for joining me today. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks so much for having us. We're excited.
Great. So let's dive in. So ConnectED Parents aims to meet parents where they are. And what gaps did you see in existing adolescent dating violence prevention or building healthy relationship skills programs that led to the creation of this technology-enabled model?
Yeah, so I guess one of the gaps that we saw was kind of around, parent engagement. So kind of there are some really good evidence-based parent ADV prevention programs, which we definitely need. But at the same time, our kind of ongoing conversations and research is showing that many parents don't actually access these programs. So they can have like the best content in the world, the best kind of like approach for education. But if parents aren't going to them, we know that they're not making the impact that they could. And there's a few reasons parents don't participate. Often time constraints, they're really busy. They might not see the programs as relevant for them. Those are all reasons parents might not participate. They have lots of competing priorities. Prevention often gets pushed to the bottom of their list because it's just not top of mind. And so behavioral science also shows us that parents, even when they know more about ADV prevention, they don't necessarily have the conversations with their kids. Sometimes those cognitive biases that we all have can get in the way. And another example of this is that many parents have information avoidance bias, meaning they might avoid ADV prevention content because of like information overload, and not because they don't care about prevention, but just because there's so many competing things coming at them in terms of information. So they might just kind of be like, that, I don't have capacity for that right now. I'm going to look over here at this information. And so there's a lot of things kind of preventing parents from engaging in ADV prevention. But we do know that parents are learning about ADV prevention in different ways now, other than kind of going to a traditional workshop or presentation. 86% of parents are going to their friends and their family for advice. Over 80% are going online or using social media for parenting info. Those offer some opportunities for peer support, and then also like kind of learning about like social norms and sort of like what are parents doing like about these kinds of conversations. And then also we know parents use text messaging daily. It's like 90% of parents are on their phones texting daily. And there's kind of a growing body of research that's showing that text messages are an effective kind of intervention for different things around public health and other topics. So we kind of looked at using that for our project based on that. And then parents also learn in these informal spaces. So just like where they're naturally going. So like the playground, or maybe like the stands at a hockey practice or a hockey game, or in their workplaces or at a community association. And these spaces aren't really used that often for ADV prevention. And so Connected Parents kind of addresses all of these different things by delivering text messages to parents where they can learn and practice skills. We have a component that supports parent leaders to support other parents to help their kids have healthy relationships. And then we look at those kind of like informal parent spaces and identify who the leaders are in those places and train them to be able to offer or like create an inclusive kind of equitable environment. So parents can kind of see what healthy relationships look and feel like, and then go home and practice that with their kids. So that's a lot of information, but that kind of is some of the gaps and then how we try to respond to the gaps.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah, for really emphasizing parents' busy schedules and how text messages are kind of becoming are a new intervention, as no one would really notice before, but now it's really a new innovative way of like reaching out. And one of the ConnectEd's program streams is sending, as you mentioned, like research-based, the skill building text messages to parents, and which you found was key for really fitting into, as you mentioned, the busy schedules and just where they are in their daily lives. And how did you decide what kind of content parents needed most, and what has the response been so far?
Yeah. Thanks for that question. So I think the first step that we took was really digging into the research to decide what would be most beneficial for parents when we think about ADV prevention. And we drew on all the research and recommendations from existing parent-focused programs. And what we saw very clearly in the research was that trusting open parent-child conversations is a key protective factor against ADV. So ConnectEd was really designed to strengthen this protective factor, healthy relationship conversations between parents and their kids. ConnectEd has 7 texting modules, and the first 2 are focused on parents, supporting parents to know what dating is and what ADV is. But modules 3 and 4 really dug in to help parents reflect on how their own attitudes and their own values and beliefs and even their own dating experiences could influence how they teach their children about healthy relationships. These modules also try to support parents to deepen their parent-child bond and relationship because, again, we know that when there is a stronger bond, when there's already existing trust, these conversations around healthy relationships can happen a little bit more easily. So that and digging into parents' own experiences around dating was a really important part of our work because we all come with our own baggage and we also come with a lot of the positive things that we want to pass on to our children. So next we focused on the youth skills that researchers like Dayanara Exner-Cortens and Claire Crooks and many others have consistently highlighted as being key to preventing ADV. And that's assertive communication, conflict resolution, and consent and boundaries. Now, of course, there are many others, but the research has often highlighted these 3 key skills. Module 5 is our longest module, and that one supports parents to build these 3 skills in their kids. And the last 2 modules focus on the warning signs of ADV and then helpful responses to ADV if children come to their parents with disclosures of it. Sorry. These last 2 are our shortest modules, and that's because they move a bit into the early intervention space and beyond. But we did feel like it was important to include these topics because some parents may have joined because they're already having some concerns. And of course, it's important to prepare parents to address ADV when it does happen. So we've covered a lot about the ConnectEd content, and I think that's an important part of our intervention. But I really want to touch a bit on the delivery method because our research shows that it played a really big role in engaging parents in the content and importantly, really keeping them engaged. We use text messages because it breaks through some of the bottlenecks that prevent parents from learning about ADV prevention and talking to their kids about it. They're brief, they're accessible, and they're really hard to ignore, right? 97% of the parents in ConnectEd said texting was a helpful way to learn about ADV prevention, and many said they liked it better than traditional program approaches. In terms of why, a lot of parents said it fit really easily into their busy lives, and it kept prevention top of mind because every few days there would be a text coming in on the topic of prevention and skill building around it. In our text, we used an interactive storytelling approach, which I think is really important to talk about because it it highlights different scenarios that build on each other. Parents are asked to text back what would they do, and they receive a more customized response. And we included lots and lots of links to other evidence-based resources and videos and services and supports. So I guess all this to say that micro learning through text played a really important role in helping parents access, learn, and apply the ADV prevention content. So, the content and the delivery or the design were well aligned and kind of went hand in hand.
Yes, thank you so much, Lianne, for diving into what the modules look like, what each section is highlighting, and what parents are expected to learn, but as well as I love to hear more about that storytelling and that skill building approaches in tandem with one another, highlighting the scenarios and receiving more of that custom response. Because I think that's how we learn is oh, this is what I would respond to. And then what's an approach that I can apply for next time when approached by the scenario. So I really appreciate you diving more into that and very fulsome answer. I truly appreciate it. I also really want to highlight the importance of parents talking to one another. So you mentioned that using a parents' Facebook group was used as both peer support and to build parent leadership as very much central to this initiative. And I'm curious as to why you think it's so important for parents to learn from other parents and what this looks like in practice, especially using a Facebook group.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so much research that does show how impactful peer support can be across different fields. So we're okay, there's something there that we could be leveraging. And we also know that yeah, parents talking to other parents is yeah, it's just such an important kind of connection where it's oh, this other person gets it. They're in the I keep using war metaphors today, but they're in the trenches with me. So I think that is, yeah, it's just it is research shows. We also know just relationally, it's really important. And in the context of ADV prevention, more than 80% of parents go to their friends and families for parenting advice. So this part of ConnectED kind of tries to support parents where they're already going. So we knew that was, yeah, that's already happening. So how do we just build in ADV prevention into that behavior? And then moving peer support into practice, it wasn't easy. And we weren't able to fully implement the peer support component of ConnectED for a few reasons. So yeah, we built a Facebook group. We planned to match parents to each other, but there wasn't really much interest in the peer leader roles, and even fewer people signed up to be matched with a peer leader. And I think it's interesting, in some of our conversations after, I think possibly there could be a gendered component to that of people maybe not seeing themselves in that term of being well, I'm not a leader, so I'm not going to step into that. So I sometimes wonder how that played in. We don't have research kind of that shows that. But yeah, so very few people were interested. And we think a few things did contribute to that. Obviously my speculation about gender is one, but we also know that sometimes a parenting identity alone might not be enough to actually facilitate meaningful peer connections. There's just so many different types of parents and approaches to parenting, and it's not necessarily the thing that's bringing people together. We also know that trust is so important in peer support, and we tried to foster that. Lianne did a great job trying to foster that in the Facebook group. But parents might not have actually felt that in practice. We also know that structured peer support models may not actually work for today's parents. So kind of having this formal sort of network of parent leaders and people can be matched with them and things like that. We just know that a lot of parents' networks and how they socialize is a lot more kind of light touch and fluid. They might be moving between groups. They might have kind of one-on-one relationships. So those tightly knit groups where a leader can sort of formally support might not be how parents actually interact right now. And then we also, we'll be launching a community report next week where we kind of talk about different sort of approaches to peer support. We talk about parent leaders, parent weavers, parent diffusers. And so using different types of peer support and kind of having things we can do with different groups of parents and networks of parents, I think is kind of the direction we've sort of tried to move in. So that's kind of, I guess, what I can say about peer support and parents.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for diving into why peer support is helpful and can be helpful, but also in today's age of it might not be, we assume that peer support would work in any situation, but maybe not in particular, particularly with that trust element and how it might not translate in every group setting or even Facebook setting. So thank you for diving into that conversation a little more. I truly appreciate it. And more about my population and public health hat. This next question really emphasized that your program is about building healthy social environments in the space where families spend time. And can you share examples of what these environments look like and how service providers or community leaders can help create them?
Mhm. Um, yeah, we dug into the research on this and also chatted with a lot of community leaders and parents about like where are parents going regularly and spending time? And places like community associations came up, in-person and online parent groups came up. A lot of parents said, I'm just in the car a lot, driving my children from place to place or from game to game or from, lesson to lesson. Workplaces, we're spending a lot of our time in the day working, but also faith settings and places like taking children to the playground or taking them to a place in their communities to spend time outdoors. So those are some of the places that came up a lot, but also, of course, on people's phones. But we've already talked about the text messaging component. So when we got this information and this feedback, we went back to the research and mainly around organizational psychology to really figure out like how do we create reinforcing environments that parents will feel safe and respected and welcomed and like they belong, because we know that when they feel that way, they are more likely to bring those healthy behaviors home with their children to reinforce healthy relationships. And the research is clear, at least in terms of workplace environments, that when people experience these positive elements of an environment, they also perform better. Their overall well-being improves, their efficiency improves. But on the flip side, when someone is working in an unhealthy or toxic work environment, that stress that they experience trickles into all parts of their life, including their home life or with their children. So we know this from the research. And we wanted to help build healthy environments in the places where parents regularly spend time, so that hopefully they bring those healthy behaviors home, right? So we conducted a literature review and developed a healthy social environments framework to help service providers and other community leaders that work with parents to build healthy parent spaces. And you can find that on our website, where we outline 6 key dimensions that create and sustain healthy social environments. So they are strong relationships, support for personal development, co-creation and flexibility. Like being hopeful and joyful was a big part of a healthy environment. Of course, justice, equity, and a focus on dignity. And last, psychological and physical safety. And of course, all those dimensions kind of overlap and weave into one another, but that's how we categorize some of our work. And we created a supplementary healthy social environments catalog that includes hundreds of ideas on how to promote these different dimensions of a healthy social environment. And we organized all these ideas in a few key buckets, right? So first, really high-level policy and high-level ways of organizing parent spaces. Then we focused on everyday practices and what we can do in our daily interactions. And then we also have a bucket of ideas around creating and establishing physical and virtual spaces. And we organized it in this way because we know it's really important for policies and procedures that structure these places to align with healthy environment principles, right? Like healthy environments need strong bones, I guess, if I can use that kind of weird analogy. So things like having good guidelines and expectations, using trauma-informed approaches, making sure that there's ample professional development opportunities around inclusion and equity. So really organizationally and at the structural level, we need that. But then also everyday practices or specific actions that people can take. So things like being able to work through conflicts when you're in a parent group and something happens, or using more inclusive language and modeling that for others, or using different approaches to help engage parents, group discussions, sticky notes, online surveys. So there's all these everyday practices that we have also in our catalog. And the last bucket of ideas really focuses on creating physical and virtual spaces that can optimize healthy environments. So, for example, having full access to a building or checking that the visibility of signage and learning materials is good. Also, just how do we decorate the places where we gather? Like, is it a warm, cozy, and welcoming space, or are we sitting in a classroom with fluorescent lighting and no windows, right? Like those things make a difference in terms of how people feel in those spaces. So those are just some of the things that I'll highlight around our social environments component and what we've learned.
Thank you so much. As obviously a population health student, I always love to talk more about the macro levels of health and healthy behaviors and not focus so much on these individual behaviors that people have to worry about when there are so many other factors we have to consider when it comes to healthy behaviors and how we consider that into the work that we do. So thank you so much for diving into the different categories and dimensions that you focus about on your work and how it all interacts into the work that you do. I truly appreciate it.
Thanks.
And yeah, so you've also spoken with many parents and caregivers regarding the challenges in discussing topics like consent, sexuality, and dating, all that I considered awkward conversations, but that's just me. um, so I'm curious, what barriers do parents commonly face, and how does ConnectED parents help them navigate these conversations?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a great question. Many parents talk about how dating is so different than it was when they were younger, or parents themselves may not have dated or like have been in kind of like settings or families where like, yeah, dating wasn't a thing and maybe they met a partner and then married them immediately or whatever. So I think it's just that the differences of what dating looks like now for many youth. And so yeah, one of the ways we try to address it is kind of trying to acknowledge that and then also like just build comfort and sort of like context about what youth dating can look like now. So for example, many youth, maybe not all, but can start into like a talking phase where they're like chatting with somebody, maybe in person, but likely online or likely over text message or on Instagram or Snapchat or whatever. Sometimes that can move into like a situationship where they're not like officially dating or like in a relationship, but they like have somebody who's like more than a friend, right? And then sometimes youth go into that phase of like, yeah, they are like actively dating. They've defined their relationship. So this can kind of mirror what some parents have experienced. It just might have different language that's being used now. And so helping parents see these kind of similarities can help sometimes make those discussions feel less overwhelming. A lot of parents also share concerns that dating will distract their children from like academics, family, friends, their extracurricular stuff. And this is super valid because many parents want their kids to be really well-rounded, reach their potential, and dating takes time and energy. And definitely we know that it can offer like lots of benefits as well for like kind of learning and building relationship skills. But yeah, lots of parents are kind of like, this is going to take away from other skills I want them to be building. And so we talk about how dating is developmentally normal, and then it does build those relationship skills. Youth are learning how to interact with each other. They're communicating, learning how to resolve disagreements, show care to another person. How do they show empathy, and how consent looks and like how you have those conversations in a range of relationships. And so these skills, like social emotional skills, really can actually improve academic success and family dynamics. Like when youth have healthy relationships, it actually can benefit these other things. And so importantly, also these skills prevent adolescent dating violence. So the more youth can like learn about them, the more we can help kind of with that prevention. We also know that some parents are concerned. I think we thought about all the concerns that parents might have. But I think a lot of parents are worried that dating could lead to behaviors that are against their values or their beliefs, their expectations of their children. This can include sexual activities. So this is also valid because like our values and our beliefs are like the bedrock of kind of who we are. And so they're often passed down through generations. And so it makes sense that parents are kind of worried about this sometimes. And so we do acknowledge in ConnectED parents that, yeah, parents might have these values, but also shutting down conversations because of maybe those values. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily help youth learn how to have healthy relationships or feel comfortable coming to their parents if there are risky behaviors happening or dating violence is happening. So it's like, how do you figure out how to hold your values and share them with your child, but also leave room for like their experience and sort of knowing that they can come to you if something is happening. And so, yeah, many youth also might get information from other sources like AI companions or influencers or even their peers, which can be really positive sometimes, but sometimes, yeah, it's like folks maybe who don't have that knowledge kind of sharing what they know with each other. And so they might not come to parents with their serious issues if things do come up, if parents are kind of shutting down those conversations. So we do talk about the flip side in ConnectED parents, open, supportive communication with children about relationships and datings, and relationships and dating and our values around dating. And then also the benefits and potential harms. We try to emphasize that research shows that this decreases the risk of dating violence and potentially risky behaviors. So really tapping into that belief that like parents want their youth to be safe. So how do we help them help their youth be safe, basically? We also know that parent-child conversations about sexuality education are correlated with a delay in first-time sexual activities and increased use of contraception and condoms. So that two-way conversation is really important. It prevents a lot of things. And so we often say to parents, you want to be the person that your child turns to about relationships. So we really try to like address the fears and then also be like, here's the benefits, here's the kind of reason why it's important to be doing these things and how do we build those skills. So
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, it could be so difficult going into these conversations that parents may be having for the first time. And I really appreciate how you're diving into how we allow for parents to be open to receiving these conversations or questions for the first time, but also building the skills and the confidence to reply that is developmentally appropriate for their child at that time that they're having these conversations. So thank you so much for kind of diving into all the barriers, all the concerns that parents may have, but also how we can navigate these conversations and build the skills that parents need to feel comfortable, but also confident in having conversations with their youth.
Oh, and there's so many other things that we like when we were brainstorming, we're like, oh, and there's this, and there's this, and there's this. But we just highlighted a few very valid concerns in the ways that we've addressed it. But yeah, I have an 8-year-old, so I kind of get where parents are coming from with some of these apprehensions. But hopefully we address some of them through ConnectED.
Definitely. And as you mentioned previously, that parents can build these healthy relationship building skills and ADV violence prevention skills through technological measures. You've had a whole webinar about it. From your research, what have you learned about how youth relationships are changing in a digital world, and how should parent-focused prevention strategies adapt in this response?
So I think because we're focusing on ADV prevention, we often break down this topic of tech and youth relationships into two areas. Like, how is tech being used to enact ADV behaviors, or also called tech facilitated ADV? And then how is tech shaping youth relationships and dating? And obviously these two things, they intersect, but I think there are some distinctions as well. And so, as you know, probably know, Alexandria, that tech facilitated ADV is rising, right? Like the prevalence of it isn't totally clear because it's often just embedded into other forms of ADV, like psychological ADV. But the research is clear in saying that this form of ADV is rising. And because young people don't really see a clear distinction between their online and offline lives, tech facilitated ADV can feel all encompassing and really have serious impacts on their health and well-being. So I think it's important to acknowledge that increasingly tech is being used to cause harm in dating relationships. And it's really important for parents to learn about this form of ADV and then how to support their children to prevent it, but also to step in when it is happening. But if I were to pivot to the second part, which is how is tech shaping youth relationships, there's just so much to talk about in terms of tech like AI or dating apps or social media, gaming, like all of these things are shaping youth relationships. And these technologies are embedded in teens' everyday lives, and they can be beneficial and also harmful for youth relationships and their overall well-being. So just as a few examples, we know that with social media, 74% of teens feel more connected to their friends through these platforms, right? And this is really important. This connection is really important. But also 1 in 5 report mental health harm from social media, right? So it isn't this black and white kind of look at social media. It's really nuanced. And that's what the research was telling us, is that young people are seeing the nuance in all of this tech. When we think about digital masculinity content, 75% of adolescent boys regularly see digital masculinity content, which is basically content policing what it means to be a man. And that often focuses on financial success or muscle building, fighting, and really rigid gender norms and stereotypes that we know are linked to ADV. And so we should be really concerned about that. And the thing is, boys are not looking for this content. Like it's the algorithms that find them. Like a lot of the young boys are like, I didn't type in any search terms related to this, and it was just showing up in my feed more and more and more. So we know that when boys are exposed to this kind of content, they're 4 times more likely to suppress their emotions, which we know can lead to loneliness, like fewer in-person connections, body image pressures. And really, that just means they're not having the best relationships with themselves and with others, right? Then there's AI tools and AI companions. And did you know that 72% of teens have tried AI companions, but 50%, 52% of them use AI companions regularly, right? And I think the numbers are probably even higher now. And often teens are using these tools for relationships. Like they can use them for practicing conversations, and figuring out like how do I deal with the situation. So there are some benefits to that. They're also using it to be creative, like making art or music or getting homework help. So these are some of the benefits that come with AI tools and AI companions. It creates, it sparks creativity. It's an academic support. This is great. But then there's the potential harm, right? And
Mhm.
increasingly, young people are going to AI companions over humans on really serious topics like dating, right? And in the webinar, Sarah talked about how these AI companions, they're non-judgmental, they're available 24/7. And when I was reading one of the reports that, young people were saying things like AI companions, they listen to me, they make me feel important. We ask the bot questions that we don't ask our parents because we're afraid to ask them, right? So first, when parents are afraid and going to AI companions instead of their parents, but then also the constant validation and then that the fact that it never challenges them, that's just not reflective of real relationships, right? So I think that's something that really needs to be on everyone's radar. But maybe the last tech that I'll touch on, and then you can interrupt and ask questions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts too, Alexandria. But dating apps, right? So even though you have to be 18 years old to use dating apps. The research shows that adolescents, especially older youth, are using them, right? So the boys, especially, are 3 times more likely than girls, and sexual and gender minority youth are 13 times more likely than hetero and cisgender youth to use them, right? So a lot of adolescents are using apps for friendships, but they're definitely finding dating partners through these apps too. And we know that there's lots of risk around that, very serious legal and safety and health risks when adults are interacting with children. But also, something I think worth highlighting is that for some youth, dating apps are a way to connect in ways that they can't connect in
Mhm.
person, right? So, for example, we have gender and sexual minority youth are able to explore their identities and connect with others and build community away from the stigma that can happen and the discrimination that can happen in person, right? So this can really help them connect to partners when their schools or maybe their geographic location may not have a lot of options or where it may not feel safe to be out, right? So I guess if I were to sum up, tech isn't really, it's not just a tool, it's literally the water that youth and adults really are swimming in. It can have lots of benefits, but obviously we have to see the harm in it and try to prevent it. So there's a lot of things that parents can do, but I'll stop there for now, and I'm curious, Sarah or Alexandria, if you have any thoughts around that.
Uh, I want to first thank you, Lianne, for just like diving in all the different tech and all the positives and benefits. I definitely seriously have major concerns when it comes to AI introducing, especially when for youth dating behaviors or seeking validation um, or seeking question and answers, particularly if these databases are coming from non-peer review or non-factual like data sets or
Totally.
are not challenging the behaviors of youth, especially when it comes to just constant validation, no matter how negative their behaviors may be, or maybe coming from an unfortunate place, a wrong, or maybe coming from just like maybe not the best intentions. So that's
Mm,
like one of my main concerns, especially with youth using AI. I didn't really consider youth using that AI in terms of dating until I went to your webinar today. So I'm very much like learning a lot from today and our conversations. And then, yeah, and thank you so much for talking about the realities of tech facilitated ADV, as well as I think people are really common with the term tech facilitated sexual violence as well, and how those can overlap as well. And yeah, thank you for just, yeah, how tech is shaping youth dating behavior. And just, yeah, I have lots of personal experiences with my own friends who are part of 2S LGBTQIA and gender minorities, and how they've had negative experiences in dating because they want to find somebody that they can date, but they can't do it unless it's through technological measures, which puts them at harm. So there's a lot to consider going forward. Thanks for letting me ramble about that. I appreciate
No,
it.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
And then kind of looking ahead, when we have so many things to consider in terms of the benefits, the harms, and things that we want to do stepping forward, what are the most important emerging questions or future directions for leveraging technology in adolescent dating violence prevention and parent engagement?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe I can
go ahead.
start this off and then, yeah, pass it over to Lianne. Because, yeah, I think there's definitely, it feels kind of like we're like at the beginning of this work, even though we've done tons like over the last like 5 years. But I do think we need to continue to understand tech facilitated ADV, especially as like different technologies are always like evolving, and help families build digital literacy that can help prevent it. Because so much can happen like when parents don't necessarily understand sort of like the technology or like how their youth might be using it, or even that their youth are using it. So I think, yeah, really doing that, developing ways to intervene early. And also, yeah, looking at how we design and test ways to leverage tech for social change. I think there's a lot of focus sometimes, which is good, but a lot of focus in the violence sector on how to reduce the risks of tech use and sort of the harms that can be caused. And it's important for us to understand that. And then sometimes, yeah, we talk about like using tech as kind of like moving something online onto Zoom. And so really kind of like maybe challenging ourselves to push a bit further and be like, how else can we be using tech for social change and violence prevention? And there's so many organizations and groups that are using tech as a core component of their prevention efforts, and we can definitely learn from them. So, for example, the Urban Society of Aboriginal Youth, like you say, they've developed some amazing VR and AR experiences to tell stories featuring the Blackfoot language, and really like learning from, yeah, what can we learn from that? And also like kind of highlight their work. Um, but maybe I'll pause there. I don't know, Lianne, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, yeah. I think another amazing example, thanks, Sarah, is Amy and Peter Guan partnered to create this really cool AI tool for identifying and flagging racist and harmful online content, which I think is super important and is preventative, right? Like it's actually flagging and reminding the person before they post, did you know that this is like harmful? And here's another way, or here's the research. Like it's an amazing tool. And Next Gen Men runs a Discord for boys that creates an alternate online space for them to interact in an environment where adults are a part of it, and really trying to deliberately shape positive masculinity norms there. So yeah, there's lots happening, and I think we can learn from these groups. But maybe the last thing that I'll mention, just stepping a bit farther away, is what are some of the broader questions around ethics of tech in ADV prevention work, right? How do we build and disseminate tech in ways that can reduce harm against people and our environment? How can tech help build human connections and not be used to replace them? How can we establish and uplift governance structures and laws and policies that encourage innovation? Because we want that. Like we want people to be thinking and doing things in different ways, but also keeping people safe, right? And so how do we think about using tech in ways for social good and not just for marketing or for capitalistic gain or for profit, but really for social good? And I think that's been a big takeaway for us is we had no clue whether texting would work. We built this prototype of an AI bot. We had no idea how this would show up, but we had to tinker, we had to test, and we had to do it in a controlled and ethically sound way, like through our ethics board, for example. But we have to, I think, as a sector, think about, challenging ourselves and being okay with maybe failing parts of it or taking some risks. And funders have to be okay with that as well and fund these kinds of projects. So I think those are some of the questions that come to mind.
Thank you so much for diving into the next potential questions and future directions when it comes to technology facilitated parent engagement and prevention of ADV. It does make my little heart happy to hear like we should nip it in the bud and focus on the social determinants. How can we prevent violence before it even starts, and actually building those skills that are helpful for having good and healthy relationship building for both youth and parents. I truly appreciate it. And then, yeah, like I love to hear more about those AI learning modules that are enforcing positive masculine models or are focused on highlighting harmful content, because I know not unfortunately very common AI modules. I'm not sure if they're getting smarter, but there definitely has been some issues in the past where they're perpetuating very negative behaviors and very negative languages. So that's really interesting to hear more about how the social good of researchers and people are fighting that and finding ways to get around that. So thank you so much for highlighting those. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
And before we end today's discussion today, was there anything that you'd like the chance to speak about more today, or we might have missed in our conversation?
I think we covered a lot, but I think anyone that wants to learn more about ConnectED, please reach out through our emails. But also, we have a really awesome Instagram page that's a bit more geared towards parents and supporting parents or peer supporters. But we also have a LinkedIn page that's more geared towards service providers or those working with parents. Our website has our lots of resources, but it includes our healthy social environments work and our framework and our catalog. So just connect in any way, and we're happy. We have a Linktree link that maybe we could include in the info box somewhere, and that way people can reach out that way too. But yeah, please stay connected, continue to learn, continue to reach out, and I'd love to check in with folks that are passionate about this area of work.
Thank you so much, Lianne. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I'm kind of a slow processor, but I'm still having a lingering thought from like the digital conversation and like thinking about using tech. And I think I would say we didn't even necessarily do this in the text messages, but really like, how do you populate all these different spaces with like examples of healthy relationships, like using tech? Like, I think just kind of that idea of like, we know so much about, like not to do this and not to do that. And like, this is a harm, but to be like, how does the youth use AI to support healthy relationships? How do they use text messaging? Like, just like all those examples in like youth programming and families. And like, I think that would be really cool to just kind of like flood the landscape with like all these positive examples, so that youth have lots of ideas about like how they can use tech to be like engaging in healthy relationships. I feel like that's kind of something I'm thinking about based on our conversation. But also I agree with Lianne that I hope people reach out to us, check us out on our Instagram, our LinkedIn, our website. And yeah, thanks so much for having us. This was really enjoyable.
Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on the HERHealth podcast, transforming health for women and girls at risk. Remember, your health matters, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, remember to prioritize your health and well-being. For more resources and support on issues affecting girls, women, and gender-diverse people, visit our website at avatraining.ca. This is Dr. Nicole Letourneau. Thank you for listening.